All right, guess what? We have boots on the ground in Ukraine officially. The Pentagon officially confirmed today that U.S. troops are on the ground in Ukraine, allegedly performing inspections of U.S. weapons caches. This information was released via anonymous media briefing. No word on whether the troops are wearing boots as they walk on the ground.
Boots on the ground. Yeah, well, maybe they should be inspected since only 30% of the goddamn weapons get there.
So that's what they're saying. So U.S. military now doing on-site weapons inspections in Ukraine. I don't think that's a good idea. Oh, that next thing you know is the Russians killed a bunch of our weapons inspectors, so now we got to retaliate. And that's how you get into World War III.
Wow, I didn't even think about that.
A small number of U.S. military forces inside that small number. They have recently begun doing on-site inspections to ensure that Ukrainian troops are properly accounting for the Western-provided weapons they receive, a senior U.S. defense official told Pentagon reporters Monday. The official, who spoke on condition of anonymity to provide a military update, would not say where the inspections are taking place or how close to the battlefronts the U.S. troops are getting. The official said U.S. personnel can't do inspections close to the front lines, but said they are going where security conditions allow.
I have a question. Why weren't they doing this like, I don't know, $80 billion ago?
Yeah, right. So we send them all these weapons, $50 billion at least in weapons alone, and we don't know where they're going. The CBS reported that 70% of them don't even end, right? Wasn't that something like that?
Yeah, 30% make where they
30% make it to the battlefield. 70% disappear. And here's the Pentagon briefing. This is General Pat Ryder.
Did they just see CBS? Is that what happened?
Here we go.
So the military has personnel inside of Ukraine who are doing weapons inspections now. I'm wondering what the rules of engagement for those personnel are if they're fired on by the Russians or if they're targeted by the Russians.
Yeah. So as mentioned, we do have small teams that are comprised of embassy personnel that are conducting some inspections of security assistance delivery at a variety of locations. And again, this is part of a broader effort of the U.S. government to track U.S. provided capabilities and to prevent the illicit spread throughout Eastern Europe. Again, I will highlight up front, we have no indication that there has been any type of illicit spread. The capability,
except that there has been, and we all know it, and that's why you're doing this. If there hasn't been illicit spread of these weapons, then why are you fucking sending American troops into Ukraine, a war zone? Yeah. Of course there has been. CBS reported only 30% of the weapons make it to the freaking battlefield.
I was going to get mad at him and say, why are you casting aspersions on the good character of Ukraine?
Did I get that? Here we go.
That we provided to the Ukrainians are being used effectively on the battlefield. In terms of personnel that are conducting these inspections, my understanding is they would be well far away from any type of frontline actions. We're relying on the Ukrainians to do that. We're relying on other partners to do that. So essentially, that would not be the case for U.S. personnel. So again, that is something that will continue to ensure the safety and the welfare of our folks that are doing this. But the point being, they're not going to be operating on the front lines.
So up until this point, there haven't been any U.S. troops inside of Ukraine, and now we do have U.S. troops inside of Ukraine.
Well, that's not. We've had U.S. forces serving at the embassy as part of the Defense Attaché Office, which is where these guys are assigned. So we've been very clear. There are no combat forces in Ukraine, no U.S. forces conducting combat operations in Ukraine. These are personnel that are assigned to conduct security cooperation and assistance as part of the Defense Attaché Office.
Right, but this would be different because they'd be working outside of the U.S. Embassy. I'm just wondering if people should read this as an escalation and U.S. involvement in the war.
No. This is just responsible management of the capability.
This is responsible management.
Except they're not going up to the front lines, right?
This is no, but they're not going because that would be irresponsible.
As soon as it gets up to a certain point, they got it from here.
Yeah. The U.S., look, you want to know about, we're talking about responsible management. The U.S. has sent more than $55 billion in aid to Ukraine, most of it as military aid. $50 billion, I think, is up to now as military aid. And what have our tax dollars and ingenuity gone towards, well, how about Stinger anti-aircraft systems used in Afghanistan? Remember how much fun that was?
Yeah, it
Afghanistan. Which these Stinger, they seek infrared light or heat to track their victims. Always the stuff of horror movies.
Thank you, Tom Hanks.
No matter how fast you run, there's no place to hide. How about switchblade kamikaze drones that can be turned into bombs that can take convoys out like popcorn, according to a CEO of weapons manufacturers that makes the drone?
Ooh.
Or how about Javelin missiles, Kurt, whose main charge is being capable of blasting apart 27 inches of steel and that have been called very effective in dense urban environments?
Well, I'll do you one better. How about only 30% of those things get to the where we want?
How about this? The Carl Gustaf rifle. Have you heard of that?
No.
This is a rifle that includes a thermobaric round. Thermobaric weapons, Kurt, they are notorious for creating a pressure wave that sucks the air out of its victim's lungs. This is all part of the responsible management. Good thing there's never any innocent victims in war, right? I'm sure there's a responsible way to use these and other responsible weapons. Just ask the millions of Ukrainians living in terror at this very moment. At your next game night, terrorize responsibly. When he says illicit spread of capabilities, this is what he's talking about. What happens to the weapons sent to Ukraine? The U.S. doesn't really know.
Well, now they're kind of doing something about it.
This is the illicit spread.
Yeah.
The illicit spread. We're basically sending troops over there to keep an eye on our investment and to see that the weapons we paid for are used to kill Russians and not line the pockets of corrupt Ukrainians, which is what it's doing.
I mean, now I don't have any information on this, but there's no way if 70% are missing, those weapons, a chunk of them ain't going to Russians.
That's right.
Like, there's no way.
Right, I know. Pentagon confirms deployment of active duty military personnel in Ukraine. Yep. Blah, blah. The fact that massive funneling of arms into Ukraine by the U.S. and NATO powers now requires the deployment of military personnel in Ukraine explodes the fiction that the U.S. is not directly involved in the conflict and is also revealing about the forces with which the U.S. is allied. To date, the United States has sent more than $50 billion in military and economic assistance to Ukraine, having financed and supplied the war. The U.S. wants to make sure it has direct control over where the weapons have ended up and how they are being used. So let me correct myself from earlier. So according to this, it's $50 billion in military and economic assistance, whereas I said $50 billion in just military assistance. So let me correct myself. The Pentagon statements followed the release of a report by the State Department on its plans to counter. By the way, so what this is like, so they're sending people over now, 8 months later, to see where the weapons are going.
They didn't think of that before?
That's like putting a condom on after you leave the whorehouse.
Oh, yeah, it is. Hey, I have herpes. Put a condom on.
Put
quick.
a condom on. The Pentagon statements followed the release of a report by the State Department on its plans to counter illicit diversion of certain advanced conventional weapons in Eastern Europe. That gibberish sounds like Pete Buttigieg's senior thesis, doesn't it?
Sounds like an Atlantic article about pandemic.
It does. The report referred to a variety of criminal and non-state actors from whom... Criminal actors, however, are embedded in the Ukrainian military, particularly in the form of fascistic Azov. Secret U.S. operations inside Ukraine are being conducted under a presidential covert action finding, current and former officials said. The finding indicates that the president has quietly notified certain congressional leaders about the administration's decision to conduct a broad range of clandestine operations inside the country. Oh, this is all so much easier than peace negotiations, isn't it? What's this all leading up to, huh? You know what nuclear war is good for? Jobs, jobs, jobs. Am I right? Okay, so we got boots in the ground in Ukraine, and they're all lying. So if they say there's just some there's a lot more, because they always are lying.
So, I mean, am I to believe that the Ukrainians' amazing push to victory was not just all their grit and determination?
See, in Denver, Palm Springs, Austin, Texas, and Burbank, California after Thanksgiving, plus We're going to be doing a lot of shows in December in Studio City. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all the tickets.